Well, we have about half the people RSVP'd on here so far, but just so that they can jump in as we go, we'll get going and respect the time of those that are here. Obviously this is our December edition of the Edmonton Real Estate Investors Association. Glad you guys could make it. Now that we're starting, I'll ask you guys to mute yourself and keep yourself muted unless you have a question or you're presenting something. And there's going to be a few spots during the presentation where you'll have an opportunity to unmute yourself.
Hey, Ivan, are we having a Christmas party after this?
Yeah, we're all meeting at Dan's house. So you have,
nice.
to make the trip out to Sherwood Park and Summerwood, but Dan is well stocked with wine and libations.
Don't dispute that.
You have to arrive in a hazmat suit, though, just so that we can keep everybody safe.
With a $1,000 bill in your pocket to pay the fine.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. We all bring fine money. Then it's no problem. And Dana will be administrating some quick COVID tests to make sure that everybody at the party is COVID free, and it'll be good. And then we'll be staying at Dan's for about 2 weeks. We'll be quarantining in Dan's place.
Those mortgage brokers sure know how to party, eh?
Yeah.
A new label, Dr. Dan.
Fines for everyone at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Dan has different ways of administrating the COVID Q-tips, you know. All right, so Edmonton Real Estate Investors Association. That one, only Gert got that one. All right, so the vision: financial freedom through real estate investing is attainable for anyone. Our mission is to create a community of real estate investors and promote an environment that encourages learning, sharing opportunities, and building relationships. We're still trying to figure out how to best do that on Zoom and Dan's house. So you can find us on facebook.com/EREIA to keep up to date with anything if you're not on the meetup. We rely on a board of directors to make some decisions and to address different items over the year. And it's a board of volunteers. Linda Hayes is one of our directors, our newest one, but she's a veteran already. Yeah, she's our newest one, but she's been around for a while. Dan is another one. Alana is our secretary. Walter Riekers is our treasurer. I haven't seen Walter for a little while. He's hiding out. Shanna is my VP, and she's out there somewhere. And then myself, Ivan Abelar. I have the pleasure of being the president and have been for the last, I think, 4 years. There has not been a coup yet, but it is 2020 and it's not over yet. So who knows? Maybe when we go to Dan's house, I'll disappear. All right. So aside from all the fun, we always have our disclaimer here. Those interested in investing in real estate are advised always to obtain professional advice. I never know if there's anybody new in the crowd. So make sure you do your due diligence. Over the evening, there will undoubtedly be different opportunities that will be shared in the chat or verbally. And so just make sure you do your due diligence before you jump in. Speaking of new individuals, anybody out there who is new to our group has grown to, we're just a pinch shy of 3,000 people that are kind of in the database that get our messaging that are from the pool that come out to our monthly meetings. And so anybody new that has joined that, we welcome you. And we hope that we can help you. There's going to be, if you have any questions about real estate investing throughout, feel free to pop it in the chat, and I'm sure somebody will be able to help. What to expect tonight? Right away, we'll talk about action takers. Give them some mic time to anybody who's over the last 30 days since our last presentation has taken some action. Then we'll jump into a market update, talk a little real estate stats, mortgage rates, economics, some news items, and unfortunately some COVID. Just part of the package these days. We'll take a little breather, top up your drinks, bathroom break. And then our main presenter is Linda. She'll be back on stage, and she'll be taking us through her personal adventures on building in Belize, but just taking a look at what steps you should take when investing in another province, another area, another country. And she at one time looked at investing in Las Vegas, so she's learned some lessons along the way, and she's dealing with some international realtors that have also given her some education. So it'll be interesting to hear what she has learned so far. Towards the end, we'll have deals and steals. So for those of you that may have a deal that you're itching to share, an investment opportunity, maybe you need some help, you need some cash to make a deal work. Maybe you need some tenants in a property, something real estate related. Maybe you have a business. Maybe you are a roofer and you want to share your company information with us about your booking in the spring. So stay tuned for that. So we'll jump into action takers. If there's anybody in the crowd that wants to share maybe an offer or a purchase, or maybe they just got pre-approved, maybe they just finished some kind of course about real estate investing, jump on and tell us about that.
Yeah, Ivan, I've Doug Robertson here. I was in Edmonton until about July, then we moved to Nova Scotia, and I've purchased a house down here, which I'm presently doing some renovations in, and we're looking at trying to purchase a 6-bedroom house here that we're renting right now that will be in short-term rental.
Wonderful.
Want to get a purchase. So it's been a short-term rental for the last 15 years, but the previous owners were just, hopefully they're not on here, terrible managers of it. He takes a week to reply to an email, so he wasn't doing very good as a manager. So we're going to purchase this property. It's a big 6-bedroom house, 3,000 square feet, ocean view, or a view of the bay anyway, right in Digby, the scallop capital of the world. If anybody wants to invest in it, they can certainly get a hold of me.
Did you say the scallop capital of the world?
Digby is the scallop capital of the world.
Oh, that's
yeah. Very, very high in tourist traffic down this way. Building a big new fish plant. The lobster season's well underway now. And it's a home of the famous Pines Hotel and Resort.
Oh,
and golf
interesting.
course go along with it too. Yeah, it's a really, really nice place. So
cool. Well, thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to hop in?
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Ivan.
Oh, great.
Okay, Gert, hop in.
My name is Gert Amel. I just basically gave myself an early Christmas present. I bought out my partner in Swan Hills. So I control that whole property up there, 25,000 square foot commercial property. My partner Nathan and I also have done 3 agreement for sales here, with one of them having been sold. The other one we have a buyer for who's just taken, put an offer on that. And the third one here looks like what we're going to do with the owner is do the renovations, let her live in the basement, rent the upstairs because it's a legal suite, and we're going to keep it for a rental.
Nice.
I can go. Hi everyone, my name is Doria. So in this past 2 weeks, I hosted my first webinar about the 6-unit building that I just closed on. So if anybody wants to still see it or missed it, then you just let me know. I can send you the replay. And also today, I put an offer down on 4 fourplexes, so a total of 16 units. So that's exciting. See if our offer gets accepted on Friday.
That's very exciting. Bravo. And great.
Ivan?
And yeah, go ahead.
I do have one client. She's looking for a realtor that specializes in agriculture, small town, as well as Calgary.
Okay.
She's selling some properties and trying to buy a property. So she's kind of finicky, but you know. Is that you?
Perfect. Anybody else?
Are you still looking for people to share some stuff, some actions they've taken over the last month or so?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I can share one. So I just submitted my last 3 essays for Jack Canfield's Train the Trainer program. And so it's not directly related to real estate, but I have been able to apply his teachings and the success principles like that to my coaching clients. And it's all about mindset and, you know, enjoying the journey of getting to building your wealth in your portfolio. So
Love
I
it.
should hear back in, I did the written or the multiple choice test, and I got 84 on my first try. And now I'm just waiting for them to accept my essays. So then I'll be a certified trainer, train the trainer.
Beautiful. I love that. Thanks for sharing.
I think I'll go next.
Go ahead.
Hi everybody. My name is Temitayo. I'm a grad student at the University of Alberta. I'm actually new to real estate investing, and then so what I've been doing recently is to educate myself, and then I'm trying to also familiarize myself with the local market here in Edmonton. And I came across this article that talks about if I look well, I would find an association of real estate investors in various cities. And then I looked up Edmonton, so I came across this meetup, and then that's how I came here today. So the goal really for me is to invest in rental properties. It's still very early for me, so I'm still in the learning stage. So, but I have plans with some friends to purchase a rental property next year. So in the meantime, what I just do is look up some listing and then try to practice some of the analysis techniques that I'm learning. So yeah, that's it from me.
Perfect. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. All right, I'll give one more spot if there's another person out there. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Yeah, I think I'll go next. Hi everyone, my name is Mubarak. So I'm a grad student in the University of Alberta. I'm a chemical engineer, so I'm pretty new to real estate too. So recently I've just been doing a number of surveys on some of the ways to develop myself in the real estate journey. Then I came across this group, and it would be interesting if probably they part of some of the experienced buyers in the house, if anyone needs like an intern, so I can get to like meet up with them, learn from their experiences, their previous investments, and probably it's gonna help my portfolio in becoming a better dealer as a real estate investor. And that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. We definitely got an international feel out there, and U of A is well represented here tonight. All right. So anybody else, we can we can jump in later on. But we'll move on to our real estate market portion, and we will have Linda hop in first.
Hello. Okay, so we're going to talk about the news update, and I somewhat feel like a broken record every month because the first part of the news that I have is, of course, about COVID. So obviously, I'm sure most people have heard about the updates that just came out yesterday. Of course, I had my slides done Monday with the new stuff from last week and then had to update them again. So right now, it started immediately where we're now allowed to have no indoor or outdoor social gatherings, whereas before some of us were planning Christmas, maybe, you know, outdoor meetings. Now we can't do that as well because this is at least 4 weeks. Other things that are starting on Sunday are that gyms, casinos, rec centers, theaters, and personal services will be closed. And for personal services, it's things like hair salons, spas, other types of services like chiropractor, doctor's offices, all those are still allowed to be open by appointment. I just was at the dentist yesterday and they did their regular temperature check and all that kind of stuff that they've been doing. Another big change, of course, is that the restaurants and bars are now closed down for in-dining service, so it'll be takeout only. So that's kind of unfortunate when they were only just allowed to open up and now they're having to close down again. But of course, there is obviously trade-offs with this that a lot of people say it should have happened earlier, but now we're kind of forced to go through this during the Christmas season. And for retail stores, we were at 25% capacity. Now it's down to 15. So 25 was that was something that the restaurants were already doing in the past. And so when they changed it last week, everyone was like, well, it doesn't really change anything, but now they're closed and retail stores are less. So I'm guessing there will be a lot more lineups at Costco to get in and places like that. And then they had already announced that a lot of the schools were moving to in-home learning. So grade 7 to 11 started November 30th till January 11th, and then up to grade 6 has to be at home after Christmas until January 11th. So quite some time to be at home, but of course we're getting used to that in Alberta anyway. So on the next slide, vaccination plans have been talked about, and I've seen some of it in the chat as well. So this changes every day. So, but one thing they just announced, I saw on the news right before this, that they are starting with healthcare workers first. But the phase 1 on the Alberta government website talks about January to April, where it will be seniors over 75 as well as the frontline workers. So we'll see how this progresses because this can change at any moment. And of course, the Pfizer vaccine is the first one. It's a little bit complex because of the storage requirements. It has to be very, very cold. And it does require 2 doses. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Phase 2 is expected to be in April, and they do say it'll be for higher risk populations, but there's no details on who that is as of yet. And then they're saying for phase 3, it's expected in fall 2021 for the general population. So we'll see how that goes, but at least there is a plan, which is kind of good news. So economic measures and CEBA loans. I always have this little link to the different economic measures that can apply to people. This is something I've sent out to my tenants right at the start of the pandemic to let them know about services in case they needed things. I've also told lots of my family members about plans that they didn't know they would be qualified for. We have a family member that worked for NATO out of town, didn't even pay tax, but he was still qualified for the new expanded EI program. Didn't know it, he ended up getting it, so it was great. So there's many programs, and there's all kinds of things for different industries and individuals, as well as that expanded EI I talked about. So I would say to go into there, look at if it applies to you. One that definitely applies for many of us as real estate investors is the CEBA loans, and there was a large update on this recently. So I know myself and a few other people on the call did get our CEBA loans for our rental business already. If you have a corporation, the people that had corporations have done this. So basically what I got was a $40,000 loan. It's 25% forgivable if paid by December 31st, 2022. And now they've expanded the program to have another interest-free loan of $20,000, 50%, which is forgivable. And so I just applied for mine today, the increase, just to see how it works, so I could tell you guys about it. And it was very simple. All I did is I went into RBC, said I want to apply, and I didn't even have to submit anything other than my company name, because RBC had already applied for the $40,000 for me in my corporate account. So hopefully the government will approve it, and suddenly I'll have, I guess, this extra money. And because the short-term rental business is less profitable right now, this is very helpful for me. I don't have, it's really hard to budget right now in my portfolio because the guests, like I had a guest check in today to stay tonight, and that's kind of the nature of all my short-term rentals in Edmonton right now. So it's a little bit challenging. So on the next slide, some other rental headlines that are out there. So there's a lot of rent relief programs all over the news. So I've just listed a few of them here. Canada's coronavirus rent subsidy program kicks off. That's for commercial rent relief. Ontario government announces a rent freeze. The Toronto rental market's turned upside down by the pandemic, hands the power to the tenants. Luckily in Alberta, we don't have anything as of yet. Right now, we had rent freezes that ended mid-June. Tenant terminations are allowed, whereas before we did need to demonstrate a payment plan with the tenants. So right now, it's kind of business as usual. I did have some things that went earlier in the year during COVID to the landlord and tenant board. They were phone meetings with the judge, and they still worked fairly effectively. So I'm sure other people might have had this experience. One challenge I'm personally having is getting tenants to allow people into the unit to view is one thing that is happening a lot if you're trying to sell property. So I'm sure other people might be having that as well if you're trying to sell. Or if you're trying to show to new tenants, that could be a problem as well. On the next slide, just the regular unemployment number. So Alberta unemployment's 11.1, so it's 0.4% up from October. Edmonton's at 11.3%, Calgary's at 10.7%. So we don't see much change in these from the prior month, but obviously still not looking good. Some other headlines to just mention, the Canada trade deficit shrinks slightly in October, still higher than expected. Energy Powers, S&P and TSX Composite Index is up to the highest level since February, and the Loonie's up as well, which it topped 78 cents US, which is the highest level since May 2018. So for me, this is great news because I'm doing a lot of wire transfers to my builders in Belize, and it's in US dollars. So I've been buying US dollars like crazy over the past week to even kind of have enough money to pay all the way up to January, just because the Canadian dollar compared to the US is doing really, really well. And then we haven't seen anything like this before. The pandemic boosts Canadian real estate. So that's an interesting thing, and I'm not going to talk much about that because we're going to leave that to the real estate update, which is next.
All right, thanks, Linda. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for the market update. Looking back now at November 2020 and how it looks, and I guess take a look at how and what we can expect in the markets going into 2021 and what maybe December will look like. First of all, I'll show you the infographic that will be the talking points for the update. So this is the infographic that I'll have my talking points on. And thank you to Live Real Estate for the great infographic and breakdown. The first piece of the puzzle will be active listings and new listings that were added to the market within November. Obviously, every month carries into it listings that haven't sold in the months prior. But then every month there's new active listings that are added. And so that plays an integral part on where the market is going, whether it's up or down or flat, the whole supply and demand. Active listing are down 50%, 6,206. New listings 1,858 for the month of November 2020. So after we look at new listings. Part of the, I guess, the puzzle is also, and I guess what gets impacted is the average value of properties. So next we'll touch on the, what the average home is selling for, average condo, and as a whole, where our average sits. We're talking average home value as a whole. When you lump all types of properties in together in the Greater Edmonton, it's up 2%, to 328,500, and as you can see, single family is up 3%, so it's now at 390. Of course, everybody loves to know where the solds were. How many solds happened in November? That's always an important part of real estate investing, and even just for personal purposes, engaging where if the market is active or not. So, what were the sales in November? Homes sold up 27%, 1,101. That's great news. A lot of times, a lot of people ask me, well, how long will it take my property to sell? Now, depending on whether you're a condo, in the inner city, to the suburbs, or a house inner city, there's a lot of different factors. As a whole, it's taking this long to sell your home. Right now, it's taking homeowners about 86 days to sell a property. Obviously, there's some below that and above that, but 86 days. So when we're looking at the different factors that we've touched on, the supply, the demand, different trends, it leads to the ultimate question of whether it's a buyer's or seller's market. Whether it's a balanced market. So in the following infographic here, we have seller's market, balanced market. When you lump everything together, obviously it paints a picture. So right now we're sitting in a balanced market, but a little closer to the seller's market side of things. So in November, the highest sale when it comes to homes is 2.6 million, apartment condos 1 million, and a townhouse or duplex 916,000. So this is a funny or interesting kind of fact. And if any of you are building in that market, if you are, I'd love to help you. So I love real estate investing, and that's why I'm part of this group. On the graphic that you see here, you'll see the last 10 years, 2010 to 2020. And you'll see that the dark line is 2020. Now, the pandemic hit us more or less in our region anyways, or with the first isolation periods in later March, and you'll see that the real estate market really took a hard dip there, and we didn't know really what to expect. I was worried about the market. A pandemic was obviously new to me in my lifetime, and I didn't know where things would head. At some point in April, we started, I guess there must have been a belief out there that we'd make it through this, and the market really started climbing, and it was later in the year compared to all those other years, but it still followed the same trend where it hit a plateau. And then the back half of the year, the markets drop and it slows down. But just this is evidence that real estate, is kind of pushes through. I've been in business for about 16 years. And in those 16 years, you know, this spring was the third time where, you know, we were kind of wondering whether the market would bounce back. And the third time it has. We're not out of the woods yet, but this statistical proof that it just kind of pushes through. So a feature that I'll be implementing in the new year is just, kind of dissecting different neighborhoods. People always ask me, what neighborhood should I do a flip in or buy rentals or invest in? And, there's no easy answer. I mean, it's a lot of times it's, deal related. Basically there could always be a deal in any community in Edmonton. This list of 10 properties is an interesting list because in the month of November, when it comes to people searching property online, these were the top 10 communities that were coming through, through the trends of searching multiple sites, including this one site. So doesn't really surprise me. Windermere is a community where it's a sexy community right now, and it seems like everybody wants to at least consider a property, more so on the retail side of things. Glenaro's have always been strong, and people are looking for opportunities where they can, on the investment side of things, find a little house and either knock it down and build something or transform it into a modern living space in a flip. Summerside's always been a strong community. Over the last 5 years, if it hasn't led, it's been right there with the amount of sales, leading the way with total sales, real estate sales per year, and then you can see the rest there. So that'll be a feature that I'll add in the new year, and just look at some different neighborhoods and see some trends, see some examples of investments, and hopefully you'll enjoy that. Just to add a little, the stats are stats, not always all that interesting, but if we can dissect some neighborhoods, I think some people will enjoy that. All right, next we got Dan. You out there, Dan?
I am, Ivan. Thank you very much. And contrary to your belief, is I love stats. I don't think they're boring whatsoever. So that's my opinion. Okay, so by the way, that's not my grandson, but I do have another one on the way, which I'm very excited about. So number 3, and what you guys can say is, come on, Dan, you don't look old enough to be a grandfather, but I'll take it while I can. So
I thought you were a great
pardon me?
I thought you were a great grandfather.
No, Dan, you do look old enough to be a great grandfather.
Thanks there, Gert. You're a buddy. Okay, similar to what Linda has done, I did my slides up on Monday, and today was the actual final date where the Bank of Canada could review the prime lending rate. And does everybody know what happened today? Nothing changed whatsoever. So that is very good from us, from the perspective of looking to borrow money. On a downside, the last number of years have been absolutely terrible on seniors who have been dependent upon investment income, things like GICs or any other types of interest-bearing accounts. So there's always a double-edged sword. But for us in the group who are looking to real estate invest, having low interest rates is absolutely a big part of our decision. When it comes to forecasting interest rates and where they're going, nobody knows exactly where they're going. It's more like a weather forecast, and we all know how accurate weather forecasts can be. But again, forecasts are simply just educated guesses. However, the general consensus out there from every single form of validated professional is that interest rates will not rise anytime for the near foreseeable future. Next slide. Okay, low, lower, and lowest interest rates. Ever since the pandemic hit, what have we experienced? We have experienced declining and lowering interest rates. So again, not only did the Bank of Canada keep their overnight rate today at 0.25, a lot of the experts are forecasting that that rate will stay the same until at least December 2021. And again, some people, just some people are forecasting that rate holds will stay at least until 2023. Cost of borrowing has plummeted during the pandemic. Before you get into that article, Ivan, that I want you to run, and I'm sure some of you may have already seen it, so I apologize for that. Again, the overall, I guess, attitude of the majority of Canadians out there today is that they are more positive today about home ownership, despite the COVID situation, economic slowdowns, everything that's going out there. So is there any logic to it? It doesn't seem to be that way. At the beginning of this pandemic, I was very concerned that as a mortgage broker, my business would basically slow and perhaps come to a halt. But it's actually been the complete opposite. It's been one of the busiest years ever. So if you can run that video, Ivan, please. Thank you.
There's nothing normal about buying a house right now. Online tours have replaced open houses. So is it any surprise that the mortgage market is turning heads too?
Since the pandemic hit, it's been a wild time in the Canadian mortgage market.
The Bank of Canada started those wild times off by slashing interest rates to record lows, hoping that would stimulate economic activity. And while everything else shut down, real estate activity's been off the charts.
People's lives have been altered dramatically. The most obvious example is they're working from home. So that's caused them to have a different appetite for the type of housing situation that they desire.
People are leaving condos and buying houses. They're trading one house for something bigger and trading the city for the suburbs.
This is a sign that the economy is still in rough shape.
Because make no mistake, interest rates this low don't happen when things are looking good. They come because the economy is in crisis.
You'd be much happier to have an economy that included decent contributions from tourism, hospitality, restaurants, and more on exports.
The drop in interest rates is yet another sign of the two-tiered recovery. Millions of Canadians lost their jobs when the pandemic hit. Many of them continue to struggle. But millions more simply adjusted to working at home. They are the target of ultra-low interest rates, and the banks know those borrowers need to pass a stress test to qualify. The risk of offering such low rates is low. Bureau CBC News, Toronto.
Next slide, please, Ivan. And whoever's out there, could they perhaps mute their audio, because we're getting a lot of feedback right now if you're not presenting or raising your hand for a question. Okay, we did talk about this a few months ago, and as you know, the mortgage deferral programs, whoops, what happened to my screen here? Okay, the mortgage deferral programs have ended back in September. So we've been sort of forecasting, when is that going to hit the market? Mortgage delinquency rate is almost 4 times higher than the peak delinquency rate over the past 30 years. 4 times higher. And in Canada, we still are very proud that we have one of the lowest mortgage delinquency defaults in the world today. Interesting, another stat, 11% of borrowers at the largest Canadian banks have not resumed their payments. And the analysts believe 10 to 20% of mortgages under deferral are at a higher risk of defaulting. Slow economic recovery, leaving millions of people still without employment or adequate support. So what does this mean? And again, this is a crystal ball forecast or estimate. Typically, there's a lag time between when mortgage deferral programs end and when the rubber hits the road. So if we look at 6 months out from the end of September when the mortgage deferral programs ended, that takes us to around March. So that's when we're going to see the true tale of how many of these individuals who deferred their mortgage payments will be unable to make their payments due to the fact that they perhaps have not regained employment or have other factors involved as well. So at that point in time, there could be a lot of product coming back on the market. Again, this is just a forecast. Okay, what are people choosing right now? Fixed or variable? Bank of Montreal survey states, over half of first-time home buyers will opt for fixed rate mortgage to offset the uncertainty. Right now, some of the fixed rates out there are actually lower than the variable rates. And more than 30% of undecided reports that they are most likely to choose a fixed rate. Next slide, please, Ivan. I know Linda touched on this a little bit, but I like the number that she had, and we were not in coercion or discussing this as well. The unemployment rate would have been 11.3%, which is exactly the same number that Linda had in October, if it included Canadians who wanted to work but couldn't search for a job due to reasons of COVID. So this is a very, very high unemployment rate. And until we get control of the COVID situation, we're going to see some high unemployment rates still. Second wave is also going to contribute to that as well. Okay, where are bond yields? So if you look at that very, very first column on the left-hand side, December 2020, the bond yield is currently at 0.484%. Take that forward to March of 2021, and again, this is a forecast. You're looking at a bond rate of changing by 10 basis points up to 0.586. Then take us another three months out, that takes us up to 0.62%. But here's where the big cliff happens. If we take that to September, wow, the forecast takes us down to 0.163%. And as you know, it's the 5-year bond rates that have the direct correlation between where 5-year fixed mortgage rates are going to be. So that drops it down to 0.163, and by the end of the year down to 147. So 0.147% on a 5-year bond yield. That's not good. Next slide, please. Where are mortgage rates forecasted to be? So if you basically zoom in, I'm just going to put on my glasses so I can take a closer look because I am a grandfather. And if we look at Q4 2020, you'll see a figure of 1.87%. That's actually quite a bit higher than where you can get, and you'll see that in the last slide here as well today. But if we take that out to another 2 years from here, they're forecasting rates to be at about 2.47. Again, crystal ball, again, a forecast myself with the way the economy is going along, the way inflation is still at check at around 2%. I think 2.47 is quite lofty. I think it will still be below that rate. Next slide, please. Stats, they're impressive. See, Ivan, stats. Stats are a good thing. I love stats. Okay, as we speak today, 5-year fixed range anywhere from 1.59% to 1.79%. Variable rates are at prime, which currently sits at 2.45%, less some factor of 0.9 to 0.30. And again, for rentals, most lenders, actually all lenders, are charging a surcharge on top of that. The first rates that you saw there right now were basically for insured mortgages. And for the investors in the room, unless you follow a different strategy, if you're buying strictly an investment property, your down payment requirement must be at 20%. And refinances are being charged with a 15 to 25 basis surcharge. One of the biggest requirements that I'm seeing more and more right now, and it takes some calculations, is, Dan, my current mortgage is at 2.89%. Outstanding balance is currently at $300,000. Does it make sense for me to basically break the mortgage, pay the interest penalty, and get into a new term? So if that's something that you're thinking about doing, call your mortgage broker and have them run some numbers, and you may be pleasantly surprised. Now, the one thing that's probably on a lot of your minds that I did not include here because my wife did the presentation late last night is the lender HSBC. What happened with HSBC on Friday? Friday afternoon, HSBC announced that they now could provide you with, on an insured mortgage, an interest rate under 1%. That has never happened in the history of Canada ever before. That is on a variable rate, so 0.99%. And at the same time, they also quoted a rate on a fixed mortgage on a 5-year term at 1.39%. Again, substantially lower than some of the rates that you're seeing on the screen in front of you here today. HSBC, like all lenders, have got certain terms and conditions and certain things that perhaps are not in your best favor. They've also identified that their products are perhaps going to be suitable for less than 10% of the Canadian population who are looking to buy their homes. And there are reasons for that. At the same time, HSBC has launched and is looking at going back into the broker channel. So what that means is that some financial institutions do not work through the broker channel that I have access to. HSBC did work with the broker channel over 10 years ago and is now strongly considering to get back into that particular product line as well too. So if that's something that you're interested in, make absolutely sure that you read the fine print, because just seeing a rate on the internet or at the bank might not be the option for you. Were there any other slides after that, Ivan?
Nope.
Okay, well, I'll throw it out to any questions that anyone may have on that for a couple seconds here.
Dan, can you expand on that the surge charge that you were talking about?
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. The rates that I was quoting before are for someone who is buying a primary residence with less than a 20% down payment. What that means is now your mortgage is required by the lender to be insured by CMHC. The surcharge applies to properties that are not your primary residence. And again, the reason the lenders do that is they are saying that there is more risk involved with a rental property as compared to your principal residence. Best way to understand that is if you owned a principal residence and a rental property and you ran into financial difficulty, which property would you stop making payments on first? It would be a rental property. So that's why they associate a higher risk on the rental properties. Does that make sense?
So you would still need your 20-25% down as an investor and then pay a surge charge on the down payment, or is this
no, a surcharge on the interest rate?
A surcharge on the interest rate. So
Yeah.
It's not a surcharge in fees to the bank or the broker. It's a surcharge on top, like a percentage that would go on.
Correct. So say, for example, your rate is 1.79 on your primary residence and you wanted to buy a rental property, that interest rate might be 1.99 instead.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Good question. The other thing that I also get asked every day is why, if I'm buying a principal residence and I'm putting down a 20% down payment versus the guy beside me who's putting down a 5% down payment, why do I have a higher interest rate? Complain to your MLA. That's all I'm going to say. It's a question we get every single day. The reason is it's all to do with risk. When your mortgage is insured and backed by CMHC, the lender is more comfortable in the event that you go into a default. But from our perspective is the person who's been more conscientious and has saved their down payment and has more skin in the game is going to be a lot less likely to walk away from that mortgage. One more question, or are we going to do a stretch break?
Hey, Dan, I was just wondering, the stats on forbearance, were they for Edmonton area specific or Canada-wide?
That'd be Canada-wide.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. It's something that is inevitable. To what extent, we don't know. Perhaps the government will come out with another plan. I don't know. But logically, it just makes sense that if people can't afford to pay their mortgages, what are they going to do? What are the lenders going to want to do? What are the insurers going to want to do? Now, keeping in mind that the banks and the insurance companies are not in the business of wanting to own real estate. That might be a silver lining there for us.
Here's a question for you, Dan. And
Sure.
I'm sure it's going to come up in the new year. I mean, we're almost at the end of the year, and people will be doing their 2020 taxes. And I'm sure someone's going to ask if they can use their CERB to qualify to add to their employment income to qualify.
Big fat no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And the reason being is, where is the guarantee of that income continuing on in the future? There is none. But on that same note, I think the government has done an absolute terrible idea of educating the general public in the fact that I know the majority of people who have received CERB have not kept back 25 to 30% of that to pay their taxes when it comes due next March, April, May, June. That's going to be a scary situation.
Yeah, I bet.
I have one very last question, quickly. Dan, do you get any pulse on like amount of foreclosures that are going to hit the Edmonton market because of all that's going on? From what you see on your end as a mortgage broker, do you get any pulse on that for us all?
The only thing I can say to that question is there were more mortgage deferral requests in the province in Alberta than any other place in Canada. But the number of people who will be going into foreclosure, no, we can't estimate that. I did speak to someone the other day about 1 in 3 individuals who was contacting the bank to basically talk about going into deferrals was basically saying they did not have a strategy when the deferral program ended. That was 1 in 3 individuals. That's a pretty scary statistic as well.
I deal with a lot of foreclosures with TD Bank and some Royal Bank, and a couple of the lawyers that I've dealt with over the last, well, throughout this year, have mentioned that they have a lot of files that have been landing on their desk with people that are in a bit of a pre-foreclosure, I guess, position. Now they say that they can still pull themselves out of that position, but if they don't, then there is a glut that will probably start hitting the market, towards February.
But having said that, Ivan, throw one at you there with Dan too. So let's say there is a glutton of properties that are coming onto the market. Do you think they would basically do that all in one shot, or would CMHC kind of do it in stages and groups of properties over a longer span? You know what I mean? Because if they do it all at once here, it's just going to be a feeding frenzy.
Yeah, I mean, not all of them are going to be CMHC. Some of them are going to be are ones that are not in the hands of CMHC. They as they go through courts and they go through their stages of foreclosure, then they start releasing them. So, where a lawyer may have 1 foreclosure a week that they pass on, that may become 3 in a week. So I can't foresee that all of a sudden in one day there's going to be 50 foreclosures hitting the market, but it'll definitely be chunks and bigger chunks than usual.
That's a good response, Ivan. Yeah, glad to see it.
And I'll be interested to see how they position themselves, because I've in selling foreclosures for over the last few years, sometimes I get frustrated because maybe 1 out of 10 is an attractive deal right out of the hop. The rest sit on the market, and they're trying to get market value, and I mean legally they're trying to salvage as much equity for the person as possible. But like I said, like 1 out of 10 foreclosures is a good deal. I don't know if that's going to increase in the new year, because if not, then there's just going to be a lot of property just sitting stagnant.
Thanks, Ivan.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I'm just going to say I put on my Mexican shirt because I want to be in the mood for when Linda talks about buying property in paradise. So I'm ready for that.
All right, and I poured myself a tequila just to get in the zone. So feel free to go grab a drink, go to the bathroom, stretch, or just hang out here and chit chat with the rest of us, and then we'll queue it up for Linda. She'll take us through her journey on her current Belize project and other things that she's come across, when she's investing in the U.S. and etc. So should be a lot of good stuff, and we can all dream about being on a beach or poolside as she's talking, sipping on a margarita. And Dan in his Mexican shirt.
Yeah, and for anyone who may be not interested in international investing, but you might be a new investor, I do show my budget template for my Belize project just as an example. It does have some extra things because it's a vacation rental, but for new investors that maybe haven't even ever seen a rental budget or done one, might be useful as well. Oh, it got quiet all of a sudden.
Feel free to chat, guys. We never
Linda,
got.
you think?
No, go ahead.
You think you're going to be able to get down there to see this new project now that everything is shut down here in the rest of the world?
Oh, that's a good point. I actually just changed my flights today again. I've changed them so many times, it's crazy. So I should have been in Belize. I think I was already supposed to fly there. Well, maybe it was 2 days from now originally. Then WestJet canceled all the flights. So I changed to be flying into Cancun on the 25th. And then they canceled the Cancun flight on the 25th. Because from Cancun, you can get to Belize on a local airline, so it's pretty easy. So anyway, I'm pretty sure it's happening. It's 2 weeks away. I have a COVID test booked on the 24th to go to have it when I get there, because in Belize, to get in, you need a COVID test first, which is one of the reasons I like going there versus I was originally supposed to go to Mexico for a week, but because they don't require any COVID tests in advance, I kind of like the idea of going to Belize instead. And another, I guess, new thing, Gert, that you might be interested in is I was going to stay till January 22nd. And then the real estate radio guys, Robert Helms is actually in Belize right now. And they just announced that they're going to do a Belize real estate investing session on January 29th. I was like, really? I'm leaving on the 22nd. So then I expanded my trip, and now we're going to be there from December 27th to February 3rd. So it'll be a nice long trip, but they had to do it right, a week later. I was like, I can't possibly leave when they're going to be there. And they're the people that introduced me to Belize, which I'll talk about in the presentation. So.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't you going to miss Edmonton winter though?
Oh God, no. Although I shouldn't complain. One of the things I love doing is running, and I don't run in the winter because I hate winter. So I usually go to Orange Theory, and I've been going a ton the last couple of weeks. I'd vamped up to go every second day before I went on holidays to use up all my sessions. And of course now gyms are closing, but because we had good weather on Monday, it was 7 degrees. I was like, hey, I can actually run outside. It's 7 degrees. So, we can't really complain, but I hear Sunday's going to be a lot different.
Oh no, is it getting cold again?
Yeah, I think a high will be -13 according to a family member that looked at the weather. And I'm like, I don't even want to look at that.
-13 isn't cold. Come on, you guys. That's t-shirt weather for us Canadians.
That's the high, though. That's the high. So in Belize right now, the high, I think, is around 27 and the low is around 19, similar to Cancun weather. So, much better. Might need a sweater at night, though, because, it's getting down to about 18. So.
Linda, are you already renting out your vacation property in Belize? Or?
No, it's being built right now as we
they're
speak.
building, okay.
Yeah, so I literally just started this process in Belize a few months ago, I guess it was now, during COVID actually. And so they just got the seawall installed right now. So.
Is it a house or a condo or?
Oh, I can't tell you that yet. I'm just
surprised.
It's I don't want to talk about it before the presentation. I will tell you about what I'm doing.
Got it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're just talking about Belize anyway, so we might as well just get rolling, eh, Linda?
Perfect. Yeah, I think probably most people had their breaks already, so I guess we'll get started here.
So Linda will take us through her journey and tell us all about what we're going to be envious of when she's over there. So international investing and her path to Belize.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ivan. Okay.
I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, perfect. So my background, I've been investing in real estate in Edmonton since 2006, and I started in short-term rentals in 2017. So the way I started was just kind of by accident because I had a new garden suite that had been built, and it was the first one that the builder had done. And I got possession right before Christmas, which is a terrible time to get tenants. So I said to the builder, well, why don't you furnish it just because you don't have any pictures of any of these, you've never built one before. And then if it works well, I will, keep it on Airbnb. So it did go well. I had 5 guests stay in December when I first put it on because of course it's close to West Edmonton Mall, which is good for tourists. So from there, every time I built a new house with a garden suite, I would do the house as a long-term rental and I would do the garden suite as a short-term rental. And in fact, I moved one of my basement suite properties into the short-term rental market as well. So because I've had about 5 to 6 properties in the short-term rental market, I do advertise on Airbnb as well as Vrbo and Booking.com. And I did start taking direct bookings as well. I've been doing that for about 1.5 years now. So I have my own website, which I'll show at the end of the presentation. And the example picture there is one of my garden suites that I have. So I do like having the separate buildings. So I did have the question about a condo, which I didn't have in the presentation. So Ron, I'll answer that right now. I have never been into investing in condos ever, don't have any in my portfolio, and it's because of the budget specifically. So when we talk about the budget, I'll show kind of the difference. Of course, if you had a condo, you'd have condo fees, right? So that's kind of my rationale for it. So my garden suites are a separate building in the same thing as the house. So on the next slide, what I want to talk about is the path I went through. Every time I say to somebody I'm building in Belize, they ask, how did you decide to invest there? Like, that's really odd. So I'm going to talk about that because people just don't expect that in a lot of cases. I'm going to go through tips to use when you're examining different markets and even just different deals anywhere you're investing. Talk a little bit about foreign currency. I work at Service Credit Union as an accountant, and I have ways to get US dollars cheaper than I can get even with my employee rates. So I'll give some information on that. If you're buying elsewhere, you might need US dollars. And other resources you'd want to consider. So the key in an investment is profitability. So you want to consider what your goal is. A lot of people are saying, oh, it'd be great to go to Belize. So if your goal is to live there, that's different. That's not an investment, right? Perhaps you just want to diversify your portfolio. Right now, my whole portfolio is in Edmonton. My website is called West Edmonton Rentals, and I do have, fairly good success on Airbnb, but I mean, face it, we're not a vacation market, and I really did want to go somewhere warm. So you might be like me, where you just want to have a property that you can go to sometimes, but when you're not there, you want to be able to rent it out. So that's pretty much where I am in my stretches. I really said, I want to go, I travel a lot. I love to travel because I hate winter. So where can I buy something that will work for this type of thing? So on the next slide, in the beginning, I did look at both Vegas and Mexico. So I go to Vegas typically twice a year. I've been there about 30 times in total, and I go to Mexico quite a bit as well. And it's basically just because of the access from Alberta, and the price of flights is pretty affordable. So initially, when I was considering Vegas and Mexico, I'd been looking for years. Every time I'd be in Mexico, I'd look at prices of, usually it was condos that I could find. And the problem there was things were very expensive. And one of the markets I kind of liked a lot in terms of if I wanted to stay there would have been Puerto Vallarta. And the average price there is $450,000 US. So that's way above what my budget was. So it was just out of the game. So I decided to look at Vegas mostly because it was an affordable market. I had done a lot of research on it. It was pretty good. I go twice a year, so it's easy there. And it's also easy to research because everything's in English. If I was trying to look in Mexico and I wanted to look up bylaws, I couldn't do that. And I'm a pretty do-it-yourself type of person. So in Vegas, I did a lot of research online, and I even went there 6 times in 2018 to 2019. So I had a realtor, I looked at different neighborhoods. Finding out all the bylaws though, was really difficult. What I didn't realize at first was that there was a whole bunch of different areas. So it was almost impossible to know if Airbnb was even allowed. So news articles I found sometimes would say, oh, you can have Airbnb if you're in North Las Vegas, but you couldn't on the Strip. So then I was like, well, can you or can't you? So I ended up actually calling the city of North Las Vegas at one point to say, I don't understand your bylaws. Like, are you allowed or are you not allowed to do this? And they said, no, we're not. We used to be, we're not anymore. So you can't really rely on anything you find online easily. And I mean, it was good I found this out. So I had stayed in Airbnbs in Vegas, but it didn't mean they were licensed. And in the end, what I ended up finding out after doing all my research, luckily before I ended up trying to buy something to put on Airbnb, if you have an Airbnb in Vegas and you get caught, there's a fine of $1,000 per night. So if you look in Vegas and you see all the Airbnbs there, you're not at risk as the tourist, except that they might be closed down before you get there, but it is very risky. Same thing in New York. New York Airbnbs aren't allowed, although you will find them on Airbnb. So unless you can research this, it's quite tough. So that's the big thing is language for me. That's why I went with Vegas. But because it didn't work, I had to decide where to go next. So in terms of, on the next slide, I talk about the fact that I wanted, when I was starting in any market, you have to start with the same due diligence you would do anywhere. So when I invest in Edmonton, I look at the area, well, the reasons we all know we invest, is there new infrastructure, what's the growth, what's the regulation, that kind of thing. Examine different property options, do a detailed analysis and budget. So if you're a member of RAIN, there's the RAIN property scorecard. I think Keyspire has some analysis you do as well. And so all these things we do in any market we invest, whether it's Edmonton, whether it's in another province, whether it's in another country. And when you do these analysis, whatever scorecard you do, it takes emotion out of the decision, which is the really big point. I was very sad when I couldn't buy in Vegas. I love Vegas. I really wanted to buy there, but the numbers didn't make sense because I couldn't do Airbnb. I could have done long-term rental, which was something I did explore. It just didn't work well with the financing, but because I couldn't actually, do anything on Airbnb, it didn't work for my my analysis. So basically, in addition to doing the same analysis I do in Edmonton, for example, once I decided to go into Vegas or Mexico or Belize or anywhere else, there's a whole bunch of other items to consider as well. So everything we do already, we do, and then we do a whole bunch more items as well. So that's what I'm going to start talking about now. So the first thing is, you might see emails, and I'll talk about a resource I use, but if you see emails or you get phone calls from people that say, if you don't buy this today, it's not going to be there anymore, you're being pressured into making a quick decision, this is probably not a good decision to make. The only exception to that is if you had already, say you're trying to invest in a neighborhood, for example, in Edmonton, your realtor, the realtor's told you it's a great market, you've done a whole bunch of analysis on the rents and everything already. Sometimes you do have to move quickly, but in other markets where you don't really know anything, if somebody's telling you you have to move quickly, it might be that they're more concerned about their commission than trying to help you make the right decision. So another thing I look at is if you can find a person that you're buying from that also invests in the same area, you know that they obviously think it's a good investment. So this is kind of a nice thing to have. And I know a lot of us use realtors in Edmonton that buy real estate themselves. Like Ivan, a lot of people use you have rental properties in Edmonton. You wouldn't tell someone to buy one if you didn't think it was profitable because you do the same thing yourself. And it's the same thing in other markets as well. If you could find a realtor in whatever market you're looking at that also owns there, that would be the thing I would say to do. And also check other resources. If you hear something from somebody that says it's great, check Google. I'll give an example later on where I thought something looked good at first, and when I started searching, I decided, no, it wasn't so good. And the other thing is generally to check references on anything you're doing, right? Do other people do it? Is it good? That kind of thing. So check out, when you're looking at a particular area, check it out in tourist season, but also in off season so you can see the difference. Because if you went to a market like, a real tourist market that was like that in the summer and it was hopping and you thought, oh, this is great, I'm going to be able to get tenants all the time. And then you look at winter and there's snow, maybe there aren't tenants, right? And I know Shanna invests in the Canmore market and summer rates are way higher than winter rates. And she factored that into her analysis when she did her budget. So it's very important to consider seasonality when you're doing your budget. So you also would probably preferably check out the area on your own as well as with your salesperson. If you have a promoter of a certain project telling you this is great, here's why, and they've set up a meeting with you to show you the project, they might have it just ready for you and it may not be kind of in the state that it usually is in. So that's something to be wary of as well. And location is one of the most critical things. And we talk about this even investing in Edmonton, but it's more critical in other places. So you have to consider where your guests are coming from. So in a vacation rental sense, if people always have to fly to the destination, how far is it to get to the airport, right? That's critical. And then obviously everyone has to drive to get to your property. So if you buy a property, make sure it has road access. If it doesn't and nobody could get there, you've just bought something that might cost you, if you want to put a road, thousands and thousands of extra dollars. So you definitely want to consider all of that. What kind of attractions are there? Just because you like the place, that doesn't mean other people do. So are attractions close by and accessible? Medical facilities important as well. Nowadays, especially with COVID, people traveling want to make sure that there are services handy for them. And I already talked about road access. So check out your competition. What are comparable properties charging? So if you're in the long-term rental game, this is a bit easier. In many markets you can find, well, in Edmonton, we often look at Rentboard or we look at Kijiji. When I was trying to invest in the US, they had a website that actually gave you data of all real estate sales as well as what rental prices were in markets. So it was actually really nice. And I suspect lots of markets in the US have that, where you can actually see, oh, if I buy a property in North Las Vegas, this is what the rent would be on average, because you can see all the rentals available and so on. So if you have that in long-term rentals, it's great. Short-term rentals is a lot harder. So what you need to do there is figure out a way. First, there's two things you need. You need to know what the average rental rate is, and it might obviously be different in different seasons. And you also need to know the occupancy rate. So one way you can get this data is through AirDNA, and they basically track a whole bunch of information about all the properties in a certain market. So they have the average rates, they talk about seasonality, but the problem is it's quite expensive. So for example, if you want to look at one market and it has over 1,000 listings, it's $100 a month on AirDNA to search that market. So if you had 3 different markets you were looking at and they were quite large, you might be paying $300 a month to analyze those markets. For some odd reason, when I went into AirDNA, Belize was free and it had all the data. So that was kind of interesting. I don't know why it said there was 399 listings and I was able to see everything. So it kind of made it a little bit nice. Also be careful of projections. So oftentimes you will see a property for sale where somebody does a projection. I never believe a projection that anyone does. I shouldn't say that. I've looked at Mogul's their schedules they do. Generally speaking, they're probably more reasonable than some of the other ones I've seen. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for what you buy. And if people do budgets in different ways, you might not be comparing apples to apples. So you can take information people give you, but make sure you do your own comparison to make sure you agree with what they're saying. And when you're buying a property, you also have to consider what the rules are. Is it a property that if you want to, you can sell it? If you want to move into it, you can, or if you want to rent it out, you can. When you're investing in a different market, you may think it's going to be somewhere you'd love to be. Some people I know love Canmore, for example, and maybe they decide, yeah, I'm investing there. I want to put it on the short-term rental market. And then now COVID hits, and let's say nobody's going. And that's not the case. I know, Shanna, sorry, I shouldn't even say that. But if that was the case and you wanted to live in it, but you had bought in a condo where you're not allowed to live in the property, that would be a problem. So you have to consider what your goal is, obviously, and what the options with the property are. And then make sure the zoning rules match what you want to do with the property as well. And this might be hard to do in a different market, right? Because, I mean, it's hard enough to look it up in Edmonton, and I do it all the time. So looking it up in Vegas was one thing. And luckily in Belize, I have great realtors that help me know what I'm allowed to do. And the developer helps, I think, with that a lot as well. So the next slide, legal factors are obviously critical as well. So one tip is to make sure you have a local lawyer. There's a lot of countries that have squatters' rights, and that would be a problem. If someone came onto your property, stayed in it, you can't get rid of them. So I can't tell you which places have that and which don't, but Belize definitely does not, and that's something very important to consider. Visa requirements. If you want to go to your property, can you stay there as long as you want in the country? For example, if you want to go in the US, there's rules on how long you can be in the US versus Canada if you want to do that. In Belize, you can go for 30 days automatically. And if you want to renew, you just go pay a fee and you renew for another 30 days. If you do that for 12 months, you become a permanent resident. So it's one of the easiest countries to do that in, which is one of the benefits. Is foreign ownership even possible? In Mexico, for example, a lot of properties you're not buying as a foreign owner directly, you're buying it through a trust. That is a whole nother level. I didn't investigate it in detail, but I know that it is required. And in that case, you need someone that you trust to hold the property for you. That's something that I wouldn't prefer to do. If you can just get fee simple title, just like we do here, that's obviously the preferable state, right? And then consider the tax system as well. So in Canada, we have what's called a worldwide tax system. I don't want to talk too much about tax. Being an accountant, I could get in a lot of details. But if you earn income in another country, you still have to bring that income into your Canadian tax return. So a lot of people have things, say in the US. I have bank accounts in the US, for example. And what happens, and I teach in the US too. And when I go to the US to teach, what happens is I file a US tax return. And then I would pay tax on that. I bring that income into my Canadian tax return, but they have a tax treaty and I get a credit on it. Okay, so that works okay. The problem is that if you're in a country and you have to pay tax there, even though you're paying tax in Canada and there was no tax treaty, that would be something to look for sure. And I won't claim to know all the rules on that. But if you're in a tax system that's territorial, it means you only pay tax based on income you earn in that location. And I can tell you that's how Belize is taxed. It's a territorial tax system. So if I go there to live and I'm, say, working in Canada, which I'm going to be doing in January, I'm not going to have to pay Belize tax. And the reason I had to look this up is I work at Service Credit Union. When I said I wanted to work in another country, they said, where are you going to work and do you know the tax rules? Because there were some employees with Service that were working in the US and Service was actually required to remit tax to the IRS. So obviously this is a very big consideration, especially with the nomad working that I talked about in last month's meeting, where, you know, a lot of people want to just go work remote somewhere. It has to be doable. And in Belize, it does work very well. So that is what I'm doing in January, going on a holiday and also working at the same time for a couple of the weeks. So on the next slide, can you speak the language? Obviously, property management and rental pools. So when you get into vacation rentals, a lot of times different properties will have a rental pool. This can be good, but this could also be bad. So if you have a rental pool that's mandatory and it charges you a lot and doesn't give you good service, that would not be good. If you have one that's a low rate, that might be really good. Same thing with property management. If you're doing vacation rentals, property management is really hard to find. But even if you're doing long-term rentals, are there good property managers available? In Belize, in my project, the rental pool takes 15%, and that's a really reasonable rate. In the Hilton, that's in the same project that I'm in, they actually do a 60-40 split. So quite a bit different than the 15% with the actual rental pool that I can be part of. Right now, I haven't decided whether I'll do that or not because my property's not built, but it is an option and it's something to consider. But there are buildings you might buy in some areas where there's a contract that's been signed that you have to stay in the rental pool and it might not be something that you want. So obviously you need to see if it is an investment, is it going to be profitable? And that's why we do budgets. And you have to have a team with resources you can trust. So licensed realtors are something we expect in Canada because, right, realtors have to be licensed. That's not the same in every market. So make sure that you know if that's the rule or not. So for example, in Belize, realtors don't have to be licensed. So if you I mean, anyone could just decide to be a realtor and sell property. So you want to make sure you find someone that you trust. My realtor, he's on the call right now. He's from Calgary and he lives in Belize. So Trevor's on the call. He can wave to everyone. So because he's a licensed realtor in Canada, I'm pretty sure he's going to follow the same rules of what he would do when he would be selling, you know, real estate in Canada. So just make sure you have someone that you trust. And it's harder when you really don't know what the rules are in that market. So I decided, because Vegas didn't work well and I knew Mexico seemed a little bit complicated, and I know Sean just commented on Mexico, you buy it through the bank, which maybe that's a good thing. And I'm not saying Mexico is a bad place to invest by any means, just the markets I wanted were a little expensive. So I decided basically to start where people had already done research, because I looked at Vegas, but when I looked at the real estate radio guys, which I'll get into more detail on, they never talked about Mexico on their website. Doesn't mean it's not good. Again, I don't know, maybe they've never looked at it, but I wanted to find a market where a whole bunch of people had a whole bunch of information, and then I could validate that information rather than starting up front. Because Vegas I looked at for 2 years, didn't do anything. I didn't want to waste another 2 years going through it. Another comment that I say this to people all the time, is that be skeptical with information, especially if it's someone trying to sell you something. So I'm going to go through some of the resources that I used to find different markets. So the first thing I did after Vegas was I got a subscription to a magazine called International Living. Does anyone else read International Living articles? Nobody?
Actually, yeah, I get that. It's actually a good.
It's a great magazine. So if you're considering investing somewhere, I would highly recommend a subscription to International Living, but I'll also give you a warning about it too. So that was one thing I did, and I've been reading lots of articles. And the other thing I did, thanks to Shanna, because she told me if you're doing international investing, look at the real estate radio guys. So I put their website here. And what I like about them is that they're people, I would say they're similar to this group. They're just people that do informational sessions and educational sessions, and they have lots of podcasts, lots of videos, lots of different things they do. So I already mentioned that they're doing a session in Belize for a few days. They're not selling real estate, they're showing you around and telling you why you might want to invest there. So no high pressure sales tactics. They also do sessions on syndicated mortgages. They do all kinds of educational things. So there is where I went to narrow down my search. So they have a lot of markets. So if you go in their website, it says markets, and I click down and I see a ton of places in the US. And then there was 3 international things, because I had already decided I wasn't interested in the US, specifically because there isn't anywhere really warm enough, and Vegas I could have lived with, but nowhere else was warm enough that I wanted particularly. I've been to Florida, California, Texas many times. So the markets they talked about were Panama, Belize, and Paraguay. So I did look into Panama and Belize as kind of the 2 ones I wanted to start looking at. And International Living talks about everywhere around the world pretty much. So you can find markets everywhere. And one thing about International Living I wanted to say was I love their articles. There's lots of useful information. They have lots of emails that go out. I see lots on Belize now too, but they also have a lot of buy right now deals that come out. So I saw an email from them that said, here's some great, well, I think it was great real estate in Costa Rica. And I looked into it. I started researching it. I got I guess the pamphlets from the salesperson. And basically this land was, do you want something where no people get to it? It's like in the wild. It's for people that don't want to, you know, have a lot of people around, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm like, no, I want roads and I want this. No, thank you. Not my kind of market. Then there was another one that was condos, and they were saying, these are great. There's a great rental pool. We've sold them in the past. They make a ton of money. And so then I thought, oh, maybe this is a good thing to just look at because they're fairly affordable and they have vendor financing. So then I went on to Google and I started looking at reviews of International Living deals and the guy who was selling. And I never found one good review. I found bad reviews and nothing good. I'm not saying they're not good deals, but as soon as I see unbalanced feedback one way that's bad, I just decided to move away from buying anything directly from International Living, although they're a great resource. So that's one thing that I did. So on the next slide, basically had a lot of news articles that I found. I also had lots of videos as well. So these are just two examples of different news articles that supported other information I found. So the first article is from the Boston Real Estate Times, and it's the 10 best places for overseas real estate investment in 2018. So just as an example of some of the markets we've talked about, Panama's #1, Mexico's #7, and Belize is #8 in this. Again, this is not something I would use to buy real estate. This is just something that supports the research I had already done. This other article is from the Forbes Real Estate Council, and it was 9 international areas to look at. And again, Belize was on there, and it was #2. Anyway, sorry. The next slide, narrowing down the search. I already said I wanted to get somewhere easily from Alberta and with warm weather. So I looked at flights, because when I was looking at Panama versus Belize, I saw WestJet flies directly from Calgary to Belize, usually from November till April, although they're not because of COVID right now. Whereas to fly to Panama at any point, it requires 2 stops. And I personally don't like having to stop twice to fly somewhere. So if I wanted to go there a lot, Panama was out of the question. So again, not saying it's not a great market to look into, but for me, the only option really that I had that had a lot of research on it was Belize. So, I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but I literally went to the real estate radio guys, found different markets to investigate, looked at them, and Belize was really the quickest one to get to. So I kind of did the same thing as what I did with Vegas. Okay, this is where I'm going to drill into. I'm going to do my budget, going to find resources, see if it's good. So English, of course, is, well, I shouldn't say of course, maybe people don't know. English is the official language in Belize. So this is a really big benefit. Obviously, if you're trying to look up things, if you're trying to do the application to have an Airbnb property, obviously these things are much easier when the language is the same. I did also buy a useful book. If anyone's interested in Belize, it's called Easy Belize by Lance Luter. And this book is great because it's a guy that is talking about positives and negatives of the market. And it's a huge book. It talks about everything from, you know, immigrating to Belize to every single market with a report card. So it'll detail out if you wanted to buy on Ambergris Caye or in Cayo or in Placencia, all these different markets, where's the best market to invest? And he actually gives them scores. And then he talks about rental market prices, how vacation rentals do, how many tourists come, but he also talks about things that make people leave Belize. So it's a very well-balanced book. So I really would recommend that if you're curious about Belize. And then the real estate radio guys, this is just a quote on their website. So they said it's a wave of opportunity you may want to ride. It takes a little time to get your mind around it, but we think the potential rewards are worth it. When we took Robert Kiyosaki there, he called it spectacular and told us he was amazed that any place like this still existed so close to the US. This from a guy who's pretty well traveled. So everybody probably knows this is the Rich Dad Poor Dad guy, and he's been on the real estate radio guys cruises that they do each year, real estate sessions for 9 days, which they happen to be doing their summit next year in Belize at the Mahogany Bay, which is right down the road from my lot, because cruises, of course, are not going ahead. So kind of supports the fact that, you know, they believe this to be a really great market to look at. So the key thing about Belize that I liked was that it's still in growth mode with new infrastructure, a whole bunch of new roads and developments. So there's one area across the island that just got a road recently, and that obviously has spurred on a lot of new developments and a lot of new bars, new restaurants, all these kind of things opening up. So one comment I heard on one podcast from the real estate radio guys is that investing in Belize would be like buying in Hawaii 30 years ago or buying in Cabo 20 years ago. So again, just kind of gives you perspective on the type of market it is. Now that doesn't mean it's necessarily all good, because if you look at websites in Belize for businesses, they look like they came from the 80s or the 90s. There's a lot of infrastructure challenges with it, but at the same time, the prices are a lot better. So when I started, the other thing about Belize, I did have a friend that bought land in Belize many years ago, and he kept trying to get me to go there to check it out because he said it was great, but at the time I wasn't even looking at investing. when I talked about Belize at the Mogul Mastermind event we had in Edmonton, the only in-person one recently that we had, one of the guys said, hey, there's a realtor from here that used to work here that bought a couple pieces of land. So I actually asked my realtor in Edmonton, I said, do you know this guy? So he reached out and said, oh yeah, he bought 2 lots in the Secret Beach area, which is where I bought 1 lot as well. And he's already sold 1 for profit and holding 1 for future profit. So it just shows that there's lots of people looking at this market, and the real estate radio guys have been talking about it for over a decade, so for quite some time. So some of the key reasons why they're talking about Belize, I'll talk about next. So tourism's been growing, and it's huge growth for many years. So the flight patterns are very important if you're looking at a vacation destination, because if flight companies are expanding, bringing more flights in, that obviously means they see the demand. So direct flights from Toronto just started in December 2016, Calgary from 2017, and there's lots of flights from Miami and Houston every day. So I was looking at flights next year, for example, even during COVID, and you can get from Miami and Houston every single day, sometimes 2 flights per day, because it's only a 2-hour flight. So what happens in Belize that's interesting is that you get people like us that want to go in the winter, but then you have people that want to get out of Houston in the summer, so they go to Belize to get away from the heat. Because Belize, it's pretty moderate throughout the whole year with highs around 30. So it's not the same as Houston where it gets really, really hot in the summertime. And one other thing I didn't mention is they do have the 2nd largest barrier reef in the world. So that's kind of handy. So also the first chain hotel, the Hilton, opened up in Ambergris Caye in December 2017, and the Wyndham's upcoming. So the Hilton was actually the first franchise hotel to open on Ambergris Caye in Belize, which is the most popular tourist destination in Belize. So when the Hilton's coming in, the Wyndham's coming in, obviously that shows that they've looked at the market as well. And rooms have not kept up with demand, which I just want to talk about for a second. Why would that be? If people are traveling and tourism is going up a lot, why would people not be buying more property there? And the challenge is financing. In Belize, banks do not have fractional lending like we do in Canada. So in Belize, the banks have to keep a whole bunch of money on reserve. And as a result, if you want a loan from a bank in Belize, it's probably going to be 50% loan to value. In the interest rates, I've never really looked, but I've heard 10 to 12%. So people don't want these loans in general, especially if you're from the US and Canada and you're used to the interest rates that Dan was talking about earlier. So with this kind of challenge, even the Hilton, their model in Belize is quite different. Investors actually buy individual units and then they share with the Hilton the revenue. So it's obviously a different model that the Hilton joined in with the developer there. And again, financing is a challenge. So what you have to do there, well, I mean, a lot of people, I guess, have money. If you don't have money and you like to finance your rentals like many of us do in Edmonton, you have to look for creative financing, vendor financing, like we've talked about in many of our meetings. So in Belize, there is a ton of vendor financing available for the land. So I got my lot with 20% down, and then my payments are over 30 years. So my loan payment in US dollars is $671 a month. Then for the build, yeah, that's a pretty good deal, hey? So I see Mike is going, that's a great deal. So this is the thing, my lot, and I'll talk a little bit more about the project. Again, not telling you should buy here or anything. It's just some of the things to consider is because I could get the deal for 30 years, my loan payment's $671. Then you think, well, how much is it gonna cost to build? For example, if I was building in Edmonton, and Mike, you could probably comment on this, how for building in Edmonton, how much would it cost, do you think, to build a really small little house, very small? What would be the starting price to build a house?
Does it have a basement or not?
No basement.
Here, I don't even want to guess because we do it all with basements here.
Yeah, you do it all, that's true.
It's such a flyer. What are you're in 250-ish there-ish?
Yeah, so probably reasonable, like 250. And obviously Mike builds way bigger houses, typically custom houses, so his price point's a lot higher. But in general, even to buy a condo that's nice, a 1-bedroom condo, you're probably in a new development that's pretty nice. You're probably looking, I mean, well over $100,000, right? Close to 200. So if you had to finance that, that would be very hard to do. So the key here, and I'll talk about this in the next slides here, is that the price in Belize is a lot cheaper. So that's a really good thing. So I'll get into that after. But property taxes also is a cost that you have. And if you were just holding land, for example, you have to pay this all the time. So property taxes on the first lot that I bought in Mahogany Bay, it's $180 per year. So it's quite different. So $180 a year compared to most of my properties here are about $4,000, $5,000 a year, quite a bit of difference. Now, keep that in mind. It means you get less services. So property taxes do pay for something. So, but in our budgeting, this works very well. So vacation rentals are allowed, and you can find all the licensing information online. So when I started doing short-term rentals in Edmonton, it was kind of scary because there was no licensing for Airbnb at all. You didn't know if it was allowed. It actually was allowed, but now there's licensing, and it's still even uncertain, and it's changing all the time. In Belize, it's allowed. There's an application. You do it. It's a little bit more simple. And I already mentioned it's easy to get in the country and be allowed to stay because you get a tourist visa, like I said, for 30 days, and you can just keep paying and renewing it. And the other thing I really like is you can have 3 rentals on one lot. In Edmonton, you cannot have 3 separate buildings on a residential lot. You can have a house with a garden suite like I do. If you're in an infill area, you can have a house, a basement suite in another house, but you cannot have 3 separate rental buildings at least right now you can't. In Belize, as long as it fits and you meet your side and rear setbacks and your distance between properties, you can put as many as you want there. And another interesting odd thing is that the builders there price things odd. If you wanted to do like a main floor unit with a unit upstairs, so say an up-down duplex, no basements there, but up-down, the price of that would actually be more expensive than building 2 separate buildings. So Mike, that probably sounds very odd to you. In Edmonton, we talk all the time about how roofing costs are expensive, foundations are. By the way, in Belize, we don't have basements, but you do need piles, concrete piles, because obviously there's water and stuff. So that is expensive as well. So having 3 rentals on one lot, when I first talked to the architect in the US, I said, well, maybe I want to put a duplex, like an up-down, because that's more efficient, and then have 1 small rental unit. And then he said, well, actually in Belize, it will be more expensive because then you need the stairwell to go up, and they price by square footage. So the builders take whatever square footage you're building and they price it out that way. So building 3 buildings of the same square footage would be cheaper than building a duplex and then 1 separate building. So it's very odd, but with COVID, this is great because I'm finding my garden suites get way more traction than say my basement suite does because people want their own building, their own ducting, all that kind of stuff. So the other advantage that I liked about Belize is, and I haven't looked in other markets and there may be similar markets, but if you look up Belize on YouTube, you could be watching videos for days on end. So there are tons of people that do podcasts. There's, well, Trevor, my realtor, Will Mitchell is the guy who owns Remax in all of Belize. And I think he puts out a video at least once a week, if not more. And he invests in Belize as well. So he shows the different properties he's built for rental purposes. He talks about, people that have bought different commercial lots and what kind of commercial businesses could be started. Because the thing there is like, they don't have a Starbucks. They don't have any franchise businesses at all on the island of Ambergris Caye. So there's a lot of potential there. And there's a lot of information as a result. Okay, so on the next slide, I already talked about Will in the videos. So they have contacts with project managers, builders, banks, lawyers, and they work you through the whole process. So Trevor put me in touch with my project manager, who's an engineer, and Jenny sends me regular updates all the time. I get pictures of how the seawall is progressing. It's a very simple process. So next slide. So I said we can have 3 rental units, and where I'm building is called Mahogany Bay Village, and I'll have some links you can look at later on so you can watch it. But you can do a phase build there, and it's a gated community, includes the Hilton Hotel, and the cost of building a 225 square foot rental unit is $35,000. So Mike's laughing at this because he's a builder, and he's like, this is weird. So why is the cost so much cheaper? Labor rates is obviously one of the big things. And I think the other thing, they do have a lot of wood there as well. So wood would be a nice benefit as well. So now the next thing to do is to talk about the budget. So obviously, if you're going to do a build, you have to consider landscaping into your budget and also furniture if it's going to be a vacation rental. So on average in my vacation rentals, what you have to include in your purchase budget. So you have to pay cash. In my case, the down payment for the land was 20%. You have your closing costs, of course. You have your building costs, and you have your landscaping, you have your furniture and appliances. So I'm going to tell you the cash outlay for one small 225 square foot unit. This is the land that I bought at 20% down. I had to build the seawall because it's on a canal. So this is expensive. This is concrete. It was $23,000 to put the seawall. Now I wanted a boat slip as well, because if you live there, you want a boat. So it could be cheaper if you didn't want that. So that was a large cost, but overall this cost $93,000. So to buy a piece of land, put one 225 square foot unit with a boat slip, it's $93,000 cash. And then you're paying, like I said, well, I'll go through the budget. So the next thing to do, you know what you're paying in cash, $93,000. So you need to do your revenue budget. And as I mentioned, you need an occupancy estimate and a price per night. So this is from Verbo. Discover destinations like Belize. So it says Ambergris Caye, there's 990 vacation homes, 331 average per night. So this is on Verbo right now. This is like, I literally just looked up this as I was gathering the detail for this presentation. So there is a one bedroom on Verbo nearby at $220 a night. The Hilton's about $200 a night, which is right down the street from my unit. And the Hilton had 92% occupancy before COVID hit. So I used $200 a night for my budget. And I went with only 40% occupancy. So it seems maybe like a low number, and it is very conservative for Ambergris Caye because it is a tourist destination. But why I use this is when I looked at, well, there's two reasons. In Land Suitor's book, he said that the overall occupancy for the whole country of Belize is 40%. Now, the whole country is not the market of Ambergris Caye specifically, obviously, but on AirDNA, when I looked up San Pedro right now, the other day, the occupancy said 41%. Now, given it's COVID right now, things are quite different. I still wanted to be conservative because we don't know how things are going to go. So now I'll show the other pieces of the budget. So on expenses, you have the loan payment on the land, the supplies. So when you have a vacation rental, you need to buy everything from toilet paper, paper towels, shampoo, coffee, sugar, all of this kind of stuff. So I included $200 a month for the budget at 40% occupancy. I use kind of the standard that I'm paying here. It might be a little different, but it's hard to know exactly till you're in the market. And then you have cleaning costs as well. And if you, obviously the rates of cleaning are way less there than they would be here. But since I didn't know, I still put it at $200 a month. I put 5% for repairs and maintenance to put in the bank. I put the HOA fees. I have HOA fees at $200 a month. I mean, it is a gated community, so of course you have to pay that. And then I have the property tax, which of course was only $180 a year. Insurance, because it's a wood home, is 3% per year. So this is what the budget looks like. I know it's a little bit small, but if I was only starting with one unit, I paid $93,000 cash, again, with the loan payment, the furniture, all the stuff I had to pay for initially. At 40%, $200 a night, my revenue for the month would be $2,400. Does $2,400 look like a good revenue for a $93,000 cash investment to anyone? Probably yes, right? Because we don't get $2,400 a rent for that much money anywhere in our markets, right? Now we do have more different expenses. Of course, we have the supplies and the cleaning, the HOA fees. Other thing is utilities are a bit more expensive in Belize, so I factored that in as well. Trevor's living in Belize right now, so he helped me get the numbers for the utilities. Property management, I put in at 15%. And so you can see with one unit, I have cash flow of $177. I know it looks a little bit small. My yearly cash flow is in there. My mortgage reduction on the land is there. So my total profit is in there. And then the next budget is 3 units. And what I did here is I just tripled everything. So let's say I get to the stage where I have 3 units, my revenues tripled. My cash investment is obviously, it's not totally tripled because I only had 1 payment on the land, but everything else pretty much, if I either tripled it or it's based on a percentage. And this is where the project looks really good. The ROI now on this budget is 18%. So if anyone wants to see the Excel spreadsheet, email me and I can send it to you, since this is very small. And this rental template is something I've showed in these meetings in the past, just for regular rentals. So if you were doing a long-term rental, you'd have your rent, you wouldn't have cleaning or supplies in it, but everything else is pretty much the same. If you have a property manager in Edmonton, you probably wouldn't pay 15%, might be more like 10, but this is the same sort of budget I do for my long-term rentals, just adding in the extra costs for the supplies and the cleaning. So does anyone have questions about the budgeting?
The 30 years mortgage term, does it work like Canada, where after 5 years you can renegotiate?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that, because I didn't put it in the presentation. This is developer financing, and you can prepay it anytime you want with no penalty. So it's based on my particular deal, and Trevor, you can comment on if this is a common deal, I don't know, but I'm paying 6% interest to the developer. It's financed over 30 years, and I can make any payments I want. And the really interesting thing, and this is a thing I really love, us Canadians tend to love, I pay the whole down payment on my US dollar credit card, and my loan payments are on my US dollar credit card. Yeah. So I've already got all these RBC, like, because it's RBC, I get all these freaking reward gift cards because I put all this money on my credit card. Anyway, so that's a huge advantage there. And here you can't put anything on your credit card. Mike, do you take credit cards for any of your building costs?
We used to once upon a time, and different suppliers used to have air miles, like for all the lumber we used to build with the houses, but they kind of stopped that over time.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, any other questions on the budget?
So how long was the holding for the build?
How long is it taking to build, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I just started in November, and it should be finished by March. So it's about 16 weeks.
I'll make a quick comment on that too. So for the phase construction payments, usually the quickest they can deliver these units in Mahogany Bay Village, if it's a small unit, about 5 months. What people sometimes do is they stretch the build process a little bit longer because it's phase construction payments. So it's a series of different payments. So you can customize that a little bit to work with your timeline as well.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, so you have different options. And originally I thought maybe I didn't want to build for a few years, and they had different streets in Mahogany Bay you could buy in that you would build, say, 3 years down the road. But then I kind of got anxious and I wanted to build right away. So then I changed. Actually, that was another great thing. I had actually purchased a lot on one of those streets, and Trevor said, well, we can just write it in the contract that you could trade for any other lot you want. And so then when I ended up selling a property in Edmonton under an agreement for sale, that got me enough cash to go ahead to do the build sooner. Yeah. And that worked really nicely. All right, so the next slide. One other thing I like to talk about, and this is my accounting talk, is what if you decided not to rent it out? Well, right now in COVID, you maybe can't, let's say. So say you had built this and it's sitting vacant and you can't do anything with it. Now, obviously, Belize is open again. They opened October 1st, so this shouldn't be a problem when I get it. But maybe you even just want to build a place to live in it part of the year and not live in it the rest, and you don't want any tenants in it. How much is it going to cost you to do that? What are your fixed costs versus your variable costs? So fixed costs are things that don't change based on the number of people in your unit, whereas variable expenses change the more guests that you have. So in my case, obviously, well, in any case, you're going to have a fixed loan payment. That doesn't change if you don't have guests. If you have HOE fees, those don't change. Your property taxes, I put $15. I mean, it's paid yearly, but save it and pay the $180. Internet, you probably have a contract, so you'd keep paying that. And then the utilities, I put just $100 in, figuring that would likely be the admin costs, because you wouldn't be paying any electricity and water if the property is vacant. And obviously you don't have to heat your property. It's electricity and water, and those are very expensive. And I'm sure they have some sort of, admin fee. So basically it's $1,000 roughly of expenses. This is in US dollars, if I don't have any guests in the property. And for me, this is important just if I decide maybe I'm not going to go there right away and set up the suite when I get possession. Well, most of these things I might have to be paying right away. So other things like the supplies, cleaning, property management, water, electricity, and maintenance all increase as you have more guests, obviously. So you have to have a flexible budget to factor that in. So the next slide is about foreign currency. Sorry, Ivan, can you switch the slide? So you need to factor in currency exchange for your purchase. So I put in the budget 93,000, which is in US dollars, and my budget is all in US dollars because everything is generally there. The Belize dollar is pegged 2 to 1 to the US dollar. So it, as long as you're budgeting everything in US, when real estate is priced in US dollars, so is your rent. So that works pretty well. And I needed US dollars and I needed an easy, cheap way to buy it. So when I first started buying US dollars, Shanna told me about Knightsbridge, which is actually great for buying US dollars. You know, if you need a couple $1,000s, I basically make a bill payment from my online banking, from my Canadian bank account. They deposited in my US bank account. And then I want to thank Sean as well. So Shanna's on the call. Sean's also on the call. So Sean said, wait, I have a better contact than Knightsbridge. So I have this guy that Sean referred me to named Darren. He's in Toronto and I have his email here. And he actually beats Knightsbridge rates all the time. And when I make a bill payment to him today, my US dollars are in my bank account tomorrow because he wires them and he covers the wire fee. So if you are looking to buy US dollars, I highly recommend you talk to Darren, but he'll only do $10,000 or more. So if whenever I'm trying to do a smaller payment, so for example, to pay my project manager and I need the money, I put it in my service bank account because they don't charge me a wire fee, then I just do it through Knightsbridge because it's like, you know, maybe $1,000 payment or something like that. So the summary, Belize is the market I chose, but these principles can be used in any market. Do your research, obviously, do a detailed budget to ensure profitability. And international investing takes a lot more work, but it can be worth it. So I did add a little picture here of my site plan just to give you an idea of what the lot in Mahogany Bay looks like. And this is the one the developer approved. So I have the canal that's on the very right-hand side of the slide. Then the unit here that's closest to the canal is the one that's going to be started building first. It's 400 square feet. Then I have the little casita. This is the 225 square foot unit that I talked about that costs $35,000 to build. So the most profitable investment probably would be to build 3 of these little casitas side by side if you wanted. But this bigger unit has laundry in it, so I wanted that as well. So, and this, guess what this is? This is the really exciting thing. Anyone can guess what this is on the site plan at the top? I don't know if you could see where my mouse is pointing, but right beside the casita in orange, anyone guess what that is? Somebody's typing, but no. So it's the pool. So I have room for a pool, and to put a pool in here, it's actually about $12,000 to $13,000. So also way more affordable than what we would cost to put a pool in here. Not that we'd want one in Edmonton necessarily with our weather, but so it's a pretty nice size lot to be able to put 3 separate buildings plus a pool. And then the other things are just a deck. So I'm putting a nice deck on this unit. And then I kind of told the project manager, I'm going to take this one out to allow parking for golf carts because in Belize on Ambergris Key, most people don't drive cars. They actually drive golf carts. So that's kind of an interesting thing too, because the island is actually very small. So it's very easy to get around. So on the next slide, these are some other resources. So if you want to know more about Belize, this is a video that is one of the best ones I found. It's the Belize video, May 2020. It's on YouTube. It's Will Mitchell, who again owns all of Remax in Belize. And he talks basically about everything, the visa requirements, why people buy in Belize, and etc. And he's from Toronto. And then I put a couple of videos about Mahogany Bay in here too, because I bought this stuff without even going there at all. So Trevor's been very helpful. He's walked around Mahogany Bay with his phone and did videos for me. But these videos, one is a very short one that Will did about Mahogany Bay. And then the second one is a video actually from the Hilton where they showed driving from the airport in San Pedro town on Ambergris Key to Mahogany Bay and what the whole resort looks like. So that kind of helped me to sort of pretend I was there, because during COVID, obviously I haven't been there. So it was kind of nice to see everything before I went. And as I already mentioned, this Belize Discovery Tour is happening January 29th to February 1st, 2021 with the Real Estate Radio guys. I put the link there. And it was funny because I had registered for this, like, tell me when the next one will be, probably like way before I started investing. And then suddenly I got an email last week saying, vote on dates. We're going to be holding this next year. And I was scheduled to leave Belize January 23rd. And now I'm actually, I just extended my stay today. So I'm going to be there till February 3rd. And one other comment, if you are ever going to Belize and you want to stay for a period of time, reach out to Trevor, because to stay, for example, at the Hilton at Mahogany Bay, it was $1,400 for a week. Trevor put me in touch with someone today where I'm staying for an entire month at a place that has a pool and is on the ocean for $990 US plus utilities for the whole month. So, and Trevor didn't even know that yet. So he's just hearing that for the first time. So you could talk about that a little more, Trevor, about that area.
I'll just say, Linda, that was so amazing. That was so in-depth. And thank you so much for doing that. Anyways, guys, I'm from Calgary, Alberta myself. This is probably the most Albertans I've spoken to at once since moving out here to Belize. So prior to coming out here, I was a commercial real estate broker in Calgary. Worked for Cushman & Wakefield, NAI Advent. I first came to Belize about 3 years ago. I've opened up a RE/MAX brokerage, and it's just an amazing place. As Linda mentioned, it's a really fast growing market, and like, wow, Linda, you really covered everything. One thing I also want to mention is our group, our RE/MAX group, we're actually hosting our own real estate investor tour on January 22nd. We've got so far we've got 7 people attending that. It's a 3-day long thing. It starts on a Friday, ends on a Monday. We do boat tours around Ambergris Key. We look at all the different developments. Again, we don't really have any any horses in this race. We just want to show you everything. But if anyone's interested in any of these properties or potentially paying a visit, I'd be happy to talk to anybody here.
And Trevor, you've already talked to people on this call. So Gert is on the call right now, who I know has reached out to you, and I'm sure there's a few other people as well.
Awesome.
All
Linda,
right, on the
amazing.
so the last slide, if you go to it, it has my information. Someone I saw in the chat, can they have my email? My email is on the last slide. So I do have a website, www.lbylrealestate.com. There I have pictures. I show all my garden suites in Edmonton. I also show the progress on the Belize project. I have savings ideas. So if you're looking like I'm going to eventually have the US dollar purchase guy on there. I have how I buy furniture cheaper, how I get cash back on all the stuff I buy online, all kinds of savings stuff there. And I know many people on the call get my real estate investing newsletters. So you can subscribe on the website there if you are not getting them already. And you can also check the last 3 where I talk about all the different things I've been doing. And I also put my short-term rental booking site here so that people can kind of look at it, and my email as well. So thank you. Any other questions?
I think there were some questions in the chat.
Well, I'll answer those while you go to the next section. How about, or do you want me to answer? Is there any that you think would be good?
I have one quick question.
Sure.
Have you looked into like how the government works with property owners? If you're you're a Canadian, I know you've thought this through. So like, being a Canadian citizen and the Belize government, is it stable and so on and so forth? And are there implications that way? It must be a pretty safe environment in that regard.
It is. So Will actually talks about that in his video, but I also read about it in the book. So I did, like I said, a lot of research on this. But in terms of the government, I think I've read books where it's like, oh, it's like a really small country. So you can go meet the prime minister. So the only thing about the government, it can be very slow. It's very small, and you have to be very nice to them. And if you're nice, then you will get results. And I heard the same thing about everyone in Belize. Everyone will talk to you. Everyone will say hi. It's very relaxed. So Trevor, you might want to maybe comment on that more since you're living there.
Yeah, it's like the locals here are the friendliest people I've ever met. Everyone speaks English. Like, there's no sense of us and them. You go to some countries where there's a big divide between the expats and the people living here. It's not at all like that. Like, you know, it's very safe here in Ambergris Caye. You can walk around, talk to everybody. It's a British parliamentary democracy. So the legal system is pretty similar to us here in Canada. It's fee simple land ownership. So yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing for me. There's very little risk of your property being expropriated. You know, you can be a Canadian or an American and have the exact same property ownership rights as a local Belizean would have. So yeah, I mean, definitely checks that off the list.
Yeah, it sounds very much a lot safer than some markets for sure. Thank you for the information. Awesome.
Absolutely. I'll add my email here to the chat if anyone wants to reach out to me afterwards.
And I know a lot of people are, and one other thing, a lot of people are asking me in the chat for my rental spreadsheet. If you can just email and ask me for it as well. So, because I don't know if I'll be able to like look at everyone's email and remember what everybody wanted. So anything you want, just email me, but I'll try to answer some of the questions as well on the chat.
And everybody can see that her email is there on the screen.
Linda, what's the healthcare system like in Belize?
There is a medical facility on Ambergris Caye. And so from what I've heard from people, I don't know if it was you, Trevor, who told me, but definitely most things you can get done there that are simple procedures. So I don't know if Trevor, if you have anything to add there.
So for all the basic stuff, they're really good. They have a lot of doctors that were trained in Cuba. They have some American trained doctors here. The doctors actually do house calls, so they'll come into your house. I've had a few run-ins myself. For things more complicated, like say a knee surgery or something, you might want to go to Miami for that. But for all the basic stuff, they're really good here.
That's what I heard. And I think I even heard some people say they go to Mexico for different things because Belize is really close to Mexico. So I know some people fly from Ambergris Caye to Belize City and drive to Tulum in 2.5 hours just to go for dinner. So that's one of the advantages of the market, right?
We used to do that all the time. I'm sure we'll be doing that again soon now that
once the land borders open, hey?
Exactly.
Yeah. Sounds awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Linda, was quite in-depth presentation there. Very well, very nicely done.
Thank you. And I feel bad that I couldn't show any videos, but we had limited time and I did put the links on there and there's lots of, I tried to not be too emotional and show all these palm trees and beaches and nice clear blue water. This is an accounting presentation, budgets, real estate investing. But if you want to see excitement and, you know, really nice areas and bars and lots of people having fun, you can find lots of that on YouTube.
Yeah, that's probably Trevor's job anyway, showing the palm trees.
Yeah. By the way, Linda, I was actually at Mahogany Bay Village earlier today. Everything is opening up and it's looking amazing out there. So I'm excited to show you around in person.
Yeah, I think they just opened today, didn't they?
Yep.
Yeah. After COVID, of course. So.
I can't wait till next year's Christmas party at Linda's place.
Yeah, no, maybe Trevor can host that. He's gonna have a new Relax office.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, we're building a 2-story office there. There's a lot of development taking place, so we'll have plenty of rooms to put everybody up.
Beauty, just bring your Speedo.
No, don't bring your Speedo.
Oh, come on, don't you guys rather want to party with Dan?
Hey, come on now.
Any more last questions there? We'll get, Linda always does a great presentation. Thanks so much, Linda.
I have a question for Trevor or Linda. Earlier in the presentation, someone mentioned that Belize is like Hawaii 30 years ago or Cabo 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Where is the forecast for real estate pricing in Belize over the next 10 years?
So
compared to today.
So when they say Belize is like Hawaii 30 years ago, I'm really looking at the market of Ambergris Caye, just because it's such a fast growing market. So right now there's less than 3,000 rooms here on the entire island. So that's why the occupancy rates and the average nightly rental rates are so much higher. To put this into perspective, 15 years ago when my business partner Will first started coming down here, there were 3 resorts on the island. If you got too drunk and passed out in one, the security guard could literally pick you up and take you over to your room in the other one. So far we've grown pretty fast. I mean, this is only a 26-mile long island, so it's only a matter of time till you know, it gets much more developed. But land, I mean, it's a limited land supply here. So, I mean, prices have to continue to increase.
And one thing I could talk about overall increase, I was talking to Dennis Kay, who's another realtor well, he sells in Ambergris Caye, lived in Belize for a long time. He's American. And he said when he first, in 2008, 2009, he was selling in Belize and the US market crashed. Nobody was buying anything in Belize. So he said every single parcel of land he sold was to Albertans specifically. He said Albertans paid his income for those 2 years, and the lots at that time were $7,500, whereas the lots now are $35,000, those same lots.
Yeah.
So it tells you kind of the growth from 2008 until now. So from that price, and in the town of San Pedro, lots I think are around $65,000. And the area I'm talking about, Secret Beach, I think utilities will eventually come there, and the lot prices will go up quite a bit as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, within the next, so Linda's talking about the west coast of Ambergris Caye, this area called Secret Beach. There is a plan to bring the utilities in. So I personally have bought up quite a bit of land there myself just to buy and hold. Property tax there, like Linda said, is $75 a year. So minimal holding costs. But if anyone wants more information on this, I'd be happy to go into a pretty detailed breakdown privately afterwards.
Yeah, and just to mention, I was talking about Mahogany Bay in my rental budget because that is the one I'm building units for rental, but I also did buy land in the Secret Beach area as well, and that price point's $35,000. You could still get financing over 30 years. My loan payments on that are $200 a month on my credit card, and property taxes are very low. So if you're, you know, and that one I don't want to build on anytime soon. That's more just to hold and, you know, see what happens.
Nice, awesome. All right, so everybody look in the chat for Trevor's contact information and, you know, set up some one-to-ones for after. And we'll move on to our deals and steals. This is a chance for anybody in the crowd to share any information about maybe a property for sale, a need for some financing that maybe somebody in the group can help with, someone's looking for some money to go buy in Belize. So if you have something to share, then unmute yourself and you have the floor for 20 seconds.
Can I get up there, Ivan?
You betcha. Go ahead, Todd.
Hi, folks. So I'm new to this group. I'm an ex-Edmontonian. I moved out to Toronto for work a few years ago. I've got a couple properties in Toronto which have been great because values go up like crazy here. So I'm happy I got in the market when I could afford to. And I'm looking for the advice on a property that I bought in Edmonton and Westmount with my sister a couple years ago. We've got a one-bedroom condo on 124th Street, happily 2 blocks away from Dutch's Bakery, which is maybe bad for the waistline, but what are you going to do? And we had a great tenant. Everything was great. It was revenue neutral. It was cash neutral, but I was fine with that. But COVID hit. Our tenant lost their job, has given notice, has moved out now, and we're trying to figure out whether it makes sense to put the property on the market or seek and the other thing is my sister was property managing it. Now she's like, I don't want to do it anymore. I just want to focus on my family. So that's fine as well. I don't want to property manage it from Toronto. That makes no sense at all. So I'm trying to figure out whether it makes sense to look for a property manager and get new tenants in or put it on the market. Any thoughts on that?
Can I share with Todd my 2 cents on that?
I'd love it.
There's some newbie investors in this group. Why not offer to team up with them and train them on how to property manage it? So they get the experience. You don't have to pay as much, and potentially will buy you a few more months to keep it off the market, potentially get a new tenant in there, and then maybe look at seeing how much you could sell it for. And if offloading, it might be a better thing because your money could potentially be doing more elsewhere or on a different type of property.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I like that a lot. I'm gonna put my email address in the chat window. So if anyone wants to maybe get with me about that, feel free to talk to me about that. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great idea. There's
Yeah.
lots of helpful people in the crowd for sure, and some people that are wanting to learn.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. The condo market has its soft spots. That area there is not too bad. But if you can hold on to it, I think you'd be in better shape. But there's always
Yeah,
exit.
Yeah, there's a lot of comps on the market right now, and I'm really worried about what's coming with foreclosures. On the other hand, like, you know, I don't know if I can keep renting out for what I've been renting out for. So it'd be good to get some, maybe to talk to some people and collaborate and figure out a smart solution here.
I'll send you an email as well, Todd.
I really appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
I'll go next. My name is Mike Fouquet. I'm the Vice President of Fouquet Homes. We're Edmonton's longest standing custom home builder. We're celebrating 9 years building in Edmonton this year. I missed the action taker, so I'll briefly say that. I found a client to build on my Westmount lot that the room kind of knows about, that I acquired through another member in the group, Gert Down. Shout out to him. So I'm going to build a $1.2 million house. We're going to start digging it in January, like through COVID and all this stuff. So stuff is happening. You got the right location, you got the right thing. It's going to move. You know, this is, and there's no realtors involved. This is a sign call. My apologies to any realtors in the room. But this is a $1.2 million sign call in COVID. So stuff happens, right? Long story short, I'm a qualified buyer. I'm looking for specifically corner lots. This is the opportunity. I'm looking for corner lots in not so infill neighborhoods, West Jasper Place, Cromdale, Eastwood, these types of things. I'm looking for off-market deals where people have pocket listings, landowners with land that want to sell it off market. If it's on market, it's typically dead for me on these land acquisitions. I pay finder's fees. Members of this group have been paid hefty finder's fees finding me off-market deals. I'm looking for corner lots specifically in non-quite in infill neighborhoods, if that makes sense to you. My last name is pretty uncommon. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. All people of this group reach out to me and have a conversation if you know private landowners who'd like to move some stuff in the infill neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
I'll go next. My name is Gert Dammel, the owner of Sunrise Home Buyers. Basically, we buy properties, also do joint ventures with people. I right now have a AFS under contract in Stony Plain. About 1,200 square feet, double garage, has a basement suite. Looking at around the 270 mark. There's about 240 owing on the mortgage, and about $10,000 of renovation. So I mean, it's fairly cheap money to get in and own a suited property in Stony Plain. Also, for the rest of you investors there, I also have a East troughing business. I always plug this every month here. Springtime, if you guys need any East troughing, ETC East troughing and renovations, by all means, give me a call. Thank you.
Thanks,
and
Gert.
congratulations, Mike, on your build.
Who's next to step up to the mic?
Hey, Ivan, it's Sean.
Hey, Sean, go ahead.
So my name is Sean Impey. I'm a mortgage broker, mortgage line, mortgage architects. I give people money that doesn't belong to me. So if anybody's out there looking, I got a number of lenders who are anxious to lend on projects, BRRRRs, flips, whatever you may have, construction financing, infills. So easy to find. Give me a shout and we can talk about your financing needs. Plus all the regular stuff too, A lender, B lenders, stuff like that too.
Anybody else?
If I can go ahead, my name is Jeremy, and then I want to thank everyone tonight for the information. Linda, that was a great presentation. I'm co-owner with my brother Frederick. Frederick is on the chat right now. Part owner of Go-To Construction. We own a few properties. We made a few conversion of legal suite in there, so we offer that service as well with regular rentals, cosmetic flip. I'm looking for an opportunity in Sherwood Park, 1,000 square feet bungalow with hopefully a good decent yard for in the future, garden suite, and possibility for a legal suite as well in the basement. Like everybody's mentioned, I'm kind of waiting for that February, March, April. We can also provide a joint venture as well for buy and hold. It might be a really good time to buy in the spring. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for people to get in at maybe lower money, cheap interest, and just hold it for a little bit and see how the market rides. So that's what we can offer. You can find us on the Facebook, website, Instagram. Again, it's Go-To Construction with Jeremy. I can leave my email as well. If you guys have any offer or know somebody wanting to get rid of a house in Sherwood Park, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll see if I can think of something, Jeremy. And I spent a lot of time in Sherwood Park, and I've found some nice bungalows for some investors in the group. So I don't have any on top of my head, but see what I can find.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'll leave my email if you want to reach out to me so we stay in touch and we can see where it takes us.
For sure.
Thank you.
So my business partner has this property for sale. It just went up. I haven't had a chance to really delve into it, but it's in the Oliver area, and so it's a lot can be done with this with an RF6 multifamily zone lot. It's long at 150. I'd like it to be wider than the 29 feet it is. But it still has some opportunity. If it's something of interest, let me know. Anybody else have a deal or a service or somehow a question maybe that we can help you with?
What is this? No, none of these investors are doing anything or what?
Oh, can I share something before I go and put my kid to bed then? Okay. So I launched an online video course to coach real estate, to coach people on growing their real estate portfolio and how to become mortgage free in 10 years. And so the online video course has a 1-month free access program. So I'll dump it into the chat box, the website to go to, and the coupon code if anybody's interested in going to the website and checking out the online video course.
Sounds good. Yeah, put it in the chat. Quiet bunch tonight.
We're all thinking about Belize.
Yeah, when we think of numbers like, well, even like this lot that's on my screen, and what can be done with less than that, you know, it makes you scratch your head and you're like, oh, you know what, maybe Linda is onto something. She's a smart lady.
Well, one thing I should mention, and I didn't say this at all, but the lots in Mahogany Bay are $150,000 versus the ones on Secret Beach at $35,000. But they're $150,000. They're on a canal. You can have a boat to get to the Caribbean, so it's a kind of different market, and there's utilities, and it's right by the Hilton. So obviously there it's more expensive, right? But because you're paying 20% down, and it was all in my budget, but just in case you were thinking those lots were only 35, the Secret Beach lots are 35, but still 150 is, I guess, still you know, way better than here, hey?
Yeah.
Linda, typically my wife never wants to hear about my real estate meeting stuff at all. She's not a real estate person, but she loves and she's always had fantasy about Belize. And so all of this, well, I'm going to talk to her about some of this stuff. It's quite interesting. Thank you for the presentation. It's very informative and very well done. You are very specific on your information, and it was very well done. Thank you.
It was more exciting than when I do just budgets for real estate and for tax like I've done in past meetings. This one was a more exciting budget presentation, right?
Probably for us too.
I would say so.
I spent 1 day in Belize, as part of a cruise, and yeah, it was such a beautiful country. I mean, it's like I had a 1 day glimpse. I'm like, oh, I want to stay here for longer than 1 day.
Well, pretty soon I'll have a place that you can rent.
Yeah.
But you still can't stay there. You're renting it out.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I might put it on Airbnb, but I've had a lot of people stay in my houses in Edmonton. I just take it off Airbnb, and when people stay that I know, I just, you know, I usually just do it at a bit above cost. I'm not going to sell it to you. Oh, it's $300 a night, because that's
Somebody's already asking for a deep discount in the chat.
Ivan, I think we know where our next board retreat's going to be.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we just have to become friendly with Trevor with his big Remax office down there, hey?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
I call him Trev now. We're tight, and I'm going to stay at his place. If he's still on here.
You've only known him for an hour there, Ivan.
We go way back to like 7 o'clock.
Are there big estate properties built there?
Oh yeah. There's some really, like there's one, if you go into Verbo, and I don't know if this is a huge property, but right in Mahogany Bay, and this is the one Trevor told me about in the beginning. He's like, you know, you could stay at this one, and he has I think there's one next door, but it's a concrete building, 3 bedrooms, has a rooftop swimming pool. And I don't even want to know what that costs to build, but if you want to stay in it, it's $400 a night on Verbo. So, and I'm sure there's other ones like that. And there is, if you look up Ambergris Caye, Leonardo DiCaprio bought a private island right across from Ambergris Caye where he's building an eco resort. So I would say that's probably some sort of exciting type estate properties likely.
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, feel free to stay on here and you can chat, ask Linda some more questions. But we'll kind of make it officially kind of wrap up this meeting. And if you can see the screen, nice little house and a gifts or with inside of a box there. If anybody is planning on, you know, buying their special someone a house for Christmas, give me a call. I'll help you buy that for them. But I won't have a chance to talk to any of you until, or at least most of you, until the new year. So have a safe December, you know, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and all that, and Happy New Year. And I think that 2021 will be a prosperous year, and I think a lot of what we experienced in 2020 will be in the rearview mirror. It still won't be perfect, but I think it's going to be a whole lot better. So looking forward to that. Stay tuned to hear who we will be having as presenters in the first few months. We'll have we're going to have a great stretch of presenters in the first quarter, or the first 4 months, really. So looking forward to that. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye for now.
Everyone.
Yes.
Thanks, Ivan.
Very much, Ivan.
You bet.
Maybe one day we'll be in person again sometime.
Yes.
I miss the drinks and the wings. Hey, Gert?
You got it. You got it. Hey, while I'm on here.
Totally.
I just want to say thank you to Ivan, Dan, Linda, you know, Lana, and all the rest of the board there. I mean, you guys have done a phenomenal job with this little platform here. I mean, I love I look forward to it on a monthly basis and everything. Met a lot of great contacts, did a lot of deals on here. So I just want to thank you very much for all the support and everything that you guys are doing out there for the rest of us investors here. So Merry Christmas, guys.
Merry
Thanks,
Christmas,
Gert.
Gert.
Same to you.
Next time we see you, Gert, we'll have a beer and a vaccine together. Maybe there.
That's a good one, Ivan.
I'll be.